Good morning and welcome to the 41st biannual meeting of the Nature Photographers of the Pacific Northwest. My name is Colleen Easley and I'll be your facilitator today as we hear from our invited guest speaker and conduct our image competitions. All of our attendees are in view and listen mode only, so there's no need to mute yourself. When it comes to the question and answer time after our speaker, you'll be able to type your questions into the Q&A panel. Please locate that link now. On a computer, you'll find it at the bottom of your screen, and on a tablet, it's likely at the top of your screen. Feel free to enter your questions in during Daryl's speaking, but we'll wait till the end of the program before we answer those. With that, I'd like to introduce you to our founder and president, Larry Rosenketter.
Good morning. Glad that you can be with us, that you've had sufficient Zoom skills or a sufficient internet bandwidth to be able to join us. This is very difficult at times for us, for those who are novices when it comes to Zoom like me. It is very, very good that we have Colleen to take us by the hand and lead us on and allow these Zoom meetings to take place during the pandemic. But I suspect that you, like me, miss the buzz and excitement of the in-person meetings. After 2 years of virtual meetings, I couldn't be any more ready to go back to our in-person meetings, and hoping very, very strongly that we'll be able to do that on April 2nd next year, that we have reserved the auditorium at Centralia College in Centralia, Washington. We have Tamron has agreed to sponsor our meeting, and Tamron is providing us with Chris Baylor as our invited speaker. And Chris, as some of you may know, is an enthusiastic proponent of Tamron's 150 to 500 or 150 to 600, whatever it is. And so much so that he has talked Tamron into providing one of these lenses as a door prize at our next meeting. But since he can't be sure whose badge is going to be pulled out of the box at the end of the meeting and what camera they use, he has a $1,500 certificate for Tamron's big lens, which should cover it. So this is unusual. We normally have door prizes, but nothing quite like this. So it behooves you to get your calendar out and mark April 2nd as a day that you'll want to be at Centralia. Hopefully the pandemic will have calmed sufficiently so that we can go back to in-person meetings. So hope to see you there then, and want your buzz and your excitement to join us. It's my pleasure then to introduce Daryl Galeen. Daryl is clearly one of us. And by one of us, I don't simply mean that he lives in the Northwest like most of us live in the Northwest, but that he shares our passion for nature photography. But now there's something that sets Daryl apart. What I'm thinking of is that Daryl has a bold and daring spirit that I'm afraid that I don't have. And probably the vast majority of our members aren't particularly daring and bold either. What I'm referring to is that several decades ago, Daryl was firmly established in a very, very nice professional position with the major beer and wine distributor in Minneapolis. And he had his career trajectory before him, and it looked very, very good. Now, I think it's safe to say that when times are good, beer and wine do very well. But when times are bad, beer and wine do very well as well. The daring and boldness in Daryl's spirit allowed him to take his enthusiasm and passion for nature photography and make a career change. Now, this was an audacious move, but it has clearly flourished. Daryl has images in virtually every publication that provides images of nature. He is represented by the premier stock agencies. He has made presentations to countless groups, led lots of workshops, received lots of rewards, and probably the thing that makes me most envious is that he has trooped around the world many times in search of wonderful images. So with this by way of introduction, I ask that we zoom on in to Daryl. Daryl, zoom away.
Thank you very much, Larry. I really appreciate that. You know, I feel very fortunate. This is the third time that I've gotten to speak for the nature photography of the Pacific Northwest. The first one goes back, Larry, all the way to spring of 2003. I think that was about the time that I started doing digital photography. From there, I did one other one that was really memorable in the fall of 2008 down in Albany. Also, one of the things that I think is really great, one of the things I can find that's good about the Zoom presentations is I was able to go back and take a look at Canon and Karen Ward's program that they gave in the fall of 2020. And it was really great to watch that program again. They've been good friends of mine for many years. And then Weldon Lee just this last spring. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go and mainly concentrate on wildlife photography, really in essence around the world. And right now what I'm going to do is share my screen. And then we're going to talk about equipment for a little bit. Yes, I'm a Canon Explorer of Light, so we're going to talk about my Canon equipment. This will just take a moment. Okay, there we go. So what I've been really fortunate and blessed to be is one of Canon's Explorers of Light now since 2005. With that, they really have been great to work with, from giving programs to equipment, keeping up to date with what's going on. But with our wildlife imagery, for us to be able to go out and photograph it, what do we need or what do I use presently or in the past? Some of the lenses, they are Canon lenses. I've used the Canon 500 f4. I still use now the Canon EF 100-400. I have the new mirrorless Canon 1-500, which I think is just outstanding. In fact, I think it's so outstanding, believe it or not, I have now sold my 500 f4. A couple of the lenses that are a little bit smaller are like the 70-200 f4, not the 2.8, because I like one that is a little lighter to travel with. Once in a while, with even wildlife photography, I'll use my 24-105. And of course, some of the other 1.4x, 2x's, and I love using some extension tubes at times. Now, one of the things that we do here with the Zoom presentation is, if you have questions at the end of this hour program, we're going to have about a 10 to 15 minute Q&A. So as you'll see, there is a Q&A thing with your Zoom. Colleen will collate those questions, and then we can go from there. So anytime you've got a question, think about it, put it into the Q&A, and we'll go from there. In my wildlife photography, the cameras that I'm using right now, Canon has gotten me a pre-production EOS R3, which is going to be the kind of like the flagship wildlife, sports, nature camera. This one, believe it or not, even has eye control. I've used it a little bit here already, and it is amazing once you calibrate it to your eye. Another mirrorless camera that I'm using is the R5. With the digital SLRs, I'm using the 5D Mark IV and the 7D Mark II. I use the flashes, the 600 EX2 RT, and also the twin light macro. Just a little bit more about equipment. I use a larger Gitzo tripod. I really love using with the Really Right Stuff ball head, the BH55. And also I use the Really Right Stuff mounting plates for the camera and lenses. Kind of how I like to photograph my wildlife. Unless I'm doing some specific pan blurs, etc., I like to photograph in aperture priority. I set the ISO to give me the needed shutter speed and the depth of field. Now, what's really interesting is when I started out doing photography during the film era, wow, any of you remember the Fuji Velvia 50? And if we pushed it to 100, wow, we had 100 ISO. Well, when I first started out with digital, I would go at a maximum of 200 ISO because of the noise that sometimes was built into those cameras back then. Now my standard ISO is between 400 and 800. And I will be showing you some images that I'm all the way up to 6,400 with some of my wildlife images. The ISO controls are really, really great now with our newer camera systems. Also, one of the tools that I use is Topaz denoise. So those are a couple of the things. Exposure compensation, I use my back wheel plus or minus and check with the histogram if it is kind of a questionable, more of a difficult lighting situation. So what we're going to do, we're going to go and we're going to take off here and we're going to go to Africa first, then to the Americas, and we'll go from there. I love doing photography in Africa. It's one of my top 3 places that I love to photograph. In fact, Kenya is probably like number 2. With that, when we are taking a look and we're photographing imagery, besides the equipment, really we want to look at what is a good image and what really is a great image. Now, to get that, we're looking for like the impact, the composition. Is it something of interest? The lighting, the subject matter. So if we take a look at this is great, but once the female is cleaning up the little cub, this is the image that I really am looking for. This is another one where this female had brought out her cubs for the first time. There was a Walt Disney crew in another vehicle on the Masai Mara right next to us. She picked up that little cub and she walked it right straight to me. So in order to get what I would say would be a great image, award-winning image, and hopefully we're going to be seeing a number of these a little bit later on here in the program with both the wildlife, the landscape, and the plant life. But really having the knowledge of your equipment and the subject matter that you are going to photograph, also along with being at the right place, the right location, that will give you the recipe for some great images. Again, this female brought this cub straight and brought the little cub right directly to me. Some of the lenses that I've used in the past or that I'm using presently, I'll give you a few examples. This is with my Canon 500 f4. It's right at f4, ISO 200, 1/80th of a second. Now on this next image, I'm going to put a 1.4 extender, which brings it out to 700 millimeters. Now, why did I do that? I wanted to come in close. Always the backgrounds are so important to me, along with having The part of the image that needs to be sharp is sharp. This is a 1.4 extender for 700 millimeters. This little dick deck that I took in Natasha National Park in Namibia is pretty darn small. It's fairly weary because it is the snack food for like the leopards, etc. So this is a 500 lens with a 2x. So instead of f4, it is an f8 now, and this is at 1/180th of a second. One of my most versatile lenses is my 1:400 image stabilized, and this is taken at an ISO of 250 and at 189 millimeters as this lion. And what I love about the zoom lens, I picked this lion up as it was walking towards me in Natasha National Park, and I was able to follow it in from right at 400 millimeters, and this then is at 189 millimeters. Sometimes what we're able to do is use even more of a wide angle lens. In fact, this is my 24-105, actually taken at 28 millimeters. This elephant is really close to me. But what I wanted to do is kind of show the elephant in the environment, and the zoom lens and at 28 millimeters allowed me to do this. Here's a herd of elephants that came kind of through the mist. There had been just a lion kill right where I'm sitting. I was photographing these warthogs that were taken by this big male lion. But as soon as this herd of elephants started coming, the lions took off to get away from the water hole. This again is like in a landscape or the environment, but it was actually taken with the 1:400 Canon lens at 400 millimeters. Now, when we look at this image, I know because of all that white rock, there's about one place in Africa that I see this all the time, and this is Natasha National Park. So if you're going to photograph any of the wildlife, you need to do it early when the light is still really sweet, as versus when the light gets a little bit up, because this white becomes really, really harsh. This is an oryx as it's walking to the water hole. A lot of times what I'm looking for is kind of doing a preconception of my photography of what images I want to get. Ken Ward mentioned this in his program when he gave that in the fall of 2020. By preconceiving, what I'm thinking is I really want to get the mother and the baby. And when this moment happened, because of my preconceptions or thoughts or desires or wants, what I was able to get was this image. And you can really recognize the moments more quickly. The catch light in the eyes is always really nice. Also, I'm looking for sharpness is the nose, the ears, and the eyes. Here's just one of the largest, if not the largest, of the antelopes. This is an eland. There's a female, she's actually pregnant. There's one thing that really, when I did my editing on the light table, that really caught my interest was the yellow-billed oxpecker. And if you look close, there are so many flies up here that oxpecker can eat on when they land on this eland. With using a little bit larger lenses, a 500 millimeter f4 lens at f4, a lot of times what I like to do is show the subject in the foreground as being really nice and sharp, but having subjects such as another one of the water bucks here in the background totally out of focus. Again, to me, backgrounds, lighting are just a really key. Also, what I like to do is what I call a border patrol. And you've got to make sure that these antlers don't merge in with the sides of your frame. If they do, those are the ones that I delete. And of course, I'm not going to be showing to everybody. Brevet monkeys. One time in our camp, in the Masai Mara, in our tent camp, what we're told is zip your tents and put something heavy on that zipper, because these guys know how to unzip the tents. Well, one of my participants, I've been really fortunate to be to the Masai Mara 7 times. Joe Van Oz photo tours, I've led tours with them I did it for decades and allowed me to travel the world. But our client, a good friend of mine, I wouldn't mention her name, Holly, but what they did is they did not zip their tent. Well, they zipped it all the way down, but they didn't put anything to block the zipper. They had wine in a box. These brevet monkeys got into the tent. And have you ever seen drunk monkeys hanging from the trees? Baboons. Always I'm looking for, I love concepts, and we'll talk about that a little bit further on here, but motherhood, loving, caring, sharing, nurturing. This is a wide angle, 28 millimeters of the herd of wildebeest crossing the Mara River. But here in the background also, I am seeing more of an artistic image. And this is with the herd here with the dust line. So using a 500 millimeter lens, this is what I was able to create. This is more the image that would stay on my wall as a print much longer than more the graphic one. But this is really great for telling a story and works well in the editorial field. Okay, we look at those rocks. If I was in person, I would be asking you where we are. Well, this is Natasha National Park. First light, backlighting is the key here, with the dusk being kicked up as the herd of zebras walks towards the water hole. To get the proper exposure, using either, in this case, using your histogram, what I will do, instead of evaluating metering, I'll come in and I'll spot more on the body of the zebra here, and then take the image from there. I usually do not bracket my exposures anymore, but I do, and I photographed in RAW, so if I'm a little bit off, I can correct it in the RAW converter. But what I do bracket is compositions a lot. And this is kind of a bracket of a composition. Right at Natasha National Park, at our campground, there's a water hole that we can photograph right from the campground itself. This is a group of zebras that's coming into the water hole, but now just a little bit later, with a little bit sweeter light, a larger herd of zebras came in. And here again is what is a good image to what I would consider a great image. One of my all-time favorite birds to photograph is the lilac-breasted roller. Again, what's the key to me is the lighting, the exposure, the color. Everything is working well with this, but without a simple background, it would take away from the subject itself. The bird photography in East Africa is just marvelous. These are a couple little swallows that I took a photograph of. And when I did it to get the blacks to the whites, it really did not have the latitude that I was looking for. So what I've done, and if any of you want to take a snap picture of this image here, what I've done is I actually took a master class of editing your bird images to perfection by Jean Wergner. And he's from Australia, fantastic bird photographer. And I was able to go in and actually cut out and work with the details in the feathers in the dark to the light areas that were a little bit overexposed. It really helped me with this image. So what I would do, if you've got a smartphone, just take a snap frame of this image here, and then we'll move on. If you're really brave with in-flight photography, try and do vertical images. The problem, of course, with vertical images is they move out of the frame so quickly. Like with this new eye control that I have with the Canon, I can actually put the eye control on this and then follow it. And it's going to be a lot easier to do a vertical image like this. This is done with my 1:400 at 400 millimeters with this vulture. I love working with feathers and photographing details and patterns. And this little guy here, the black-crested coran in Natasha National Park in Namibia, was just a wonderful bird to be able to photograph. 1,000 millimeters with this white-tailed kite. Again, my theme is simple backgrounds, making sure that the bill, the eye are really tack sharp. One of the wonderful starlings that we have in Africa, saddle-billed stork, right at the moment where he caught the snake. 1,000 millimeters with this gray heron. With digital, and a lot of times now, I'm finding that I'm really enjoying photographing high key images. And high key images is the backgrounds can be white, they can be light gray such as this, but make sure that you get the proper exposure. This is like a perfect middle tone gray right in the body. So it is a relatively easy exposure to get. Crowned cranes. This is one of those with a border patrol again. I'm 500 millimeter lens with a 1.4 extender, and this guy's wings are flying all over the place. So using my motor drive, what I'm trying to do is watch as he stays as close to in the frame, and of course taking bursts of 5 or more images at a time, and then editing when I get back. What I like to do is every night when I'm out doing wildlife photography or any type of photography, I bring my laptop with me. I download the images and I review a selected few of them. I even convert a few of them every night while I'm out in the field. Why? I want to make sure that everything's working right with the camera and everything is working right with my thought process, because sometimes you just might miss something. And when we go to Japan for the winter, I'll show you an example of why I was able then, fortunately, to repeat, going back and trying to repeat an image. Little bee eater at 1,000 millimeters, 700 millimeters. And what I've done is the light was just beautiful. And I wanted to work with this female ostrich. But then the light went down and then she decides to run. So here what I'm working with is a pan blur. This is where then I go into shutter priority. I set 1/30th of a second doing this pan blur. I usually don't show kills because kills for me, I mainly am a stock photographer. I do a lot with paper products and that. And blood and gore does not sell. But I just wanted to show this image. This is at a 700 millimeters with this leopard that right on the edge of the Mara River as they're starting to cross the wildebeest, this little guy got caught. I prefer showing leopard images like the next one. This is a female leopard bringing out for the first time her 2 cubs. There are 30 vehicles almost surrounding this leopard. And lo and behold, she decides to come straight to me and puts her cub right next to my vehicle to where I'm able to get this image. Sometimes you're extremely lucky, but many times also you're placing with your guide, knowing where to be placed, and hopefully these type of images will come your way. Now, whenever I do a digital composition, where what I've done is, this is several images that have been put together, I will tell you. And this one is a leopard in Samburu National Park, Kenya, sleeping, of course, high up in this log. This is the image. But I also had this wonderful sky that I had taken a little bit earlier in the day. And this is what I was able to come up with. Another one, what is a good image? This is Cape Buffalo. But now when he looks straight at me, and at the same time, the yellow-billed oxpecker gives me that look. Border Patrol, really important on both sides of this. Now, once we get through with Africa and a little bit more of some of this story and kind of a little bit of the teaching aspect of it, I'm going to move a little bit quicker on some of the other areas that we're going to go to. This guy had a better day. Lake Nakuro National Park, Kenya, and a serval cat in the Mara. You know, I loved in Lake Nakuro working with all these flamingos, but doggone it, this hippo came and got in the way. So I just had to take his picture. Most of the time, what you see with these guys is their tail, and that is it. But this big warthog, older male, just posed for me. Bat-eared foxes. Now let's talk about concepts for a minute. What I like to do is think in my photography concepts. Here's some of them: loving, caring, sharing, nurturing, motherhood, power, strength, speed, survival, prey, youth, and it can go on and on. But I'm going to just show you a few examples. I think what we're going to do, we're going to come up with, like the first one, maybe is going to be youth. How about a couple baby cheetahs that are looking straight at you? Or this female chasing after a prey, speed, strength, power. This has kind of a story also. To get this jackrabbit, it took a female and her 3 young, well, they weren't cubs, they were year-old cheetahs. This jackrabbit evaded all of them, I'd say for about 10 minutes before finally it took 4 of them to get this poor rabbit. These moments are really cute with this little cub standing up with the mother. Or these black-backed jackals, these young cubs that just came out of the denning hole is right in front of you right here. But it's nose to nose, it's putting that tongue out and saying hello, licking its friend. Or motherhood, caring, sharing, nurturing, Samburu, reticulated giraffe, mother with a juvenile, with a baby that just was born the day before and the umbilical cord was still hanging on. Now with COVID, what is happening more and more, a lot of us as pro photographers also are sticking more to the Americas, to North America, for instance. Just talking with my stock agency, Danita Delamont, yesterday, she mentioned that Art Wolf, instead of doing all these travels, which I'm also showing you in this, you know, traveling the world, Art has been going more to Mount Rainier, the Olympic National Park, revisiting a lot of those, going up to the Skagit Flats to work with the tundra swans and the snow geese and that. Here's Yellowstone, Middle Geyser Basin, right at sunset. I preconceived and was hoping that I would see an elk walking through, and finally one did, because I stayed in this location for quite some time, doing the exposure on the highlights, thus silhouetting the bull elk as it walks by. Or going in the wintertime, coming up here for me, January, February would be really great. Lamar Valley. If you notice, the snow is kind of stopped here. If you photograph your snow at least at 1/250th of a second or a greater shutter speed, what you're able to do is stop the motion of it. The crown of snow on this bighorn ram in the Lamar Valley as we're going that direction. I do a lot of photography right in my backyard. I'm putting suet feeders and bird feeders out, and this is really right off of my deck. I have a nice Japanese maple tree that's there. Actually getting pileated woodpeckers. Well, this red box is saying, I don't like this stem here. So in a moment, what he's going to do, he's going to actually pop up onto this stem, and I'm going to do vertical, and it keeps a much simpler background. Rufous-sided towhee. Stellar jay right at this time in the fall. This is an example. My neighbor gave me a call and said, Daryl, I've got this barred owl that's right in the tree, really low down. Come on over. So I took my new 100-500 image stabilized lens with my R5, which is the mirrorless Canon. And it was so low light to get this image, even at f8, it took 6400 ISO. And believe it or not, I've not even put this through any noise programs to correct for it. There is a little bit of noise that you can see here. So what I would do is with Topaz, with the Topaz Denoise AI program, that's how you can correct that. Another example is this was just taken the other day of a robin. This robin was taken at 3200 ISO. Going up to Alaska, I just posted this on my social media the other day, actually announcing and mentioning that I was going to give the program today. This is a willow ptarmigan. Really, we need to know the time of the years to go. To go to Denali National Park, perfect timing, end of August, first part of September. The fall colors are there. The coats on everything from the grizzly bears, etc. Their coats are really just beautiful. Like with this caribou here, the coats are in perfect condition in the fall. If you go, let's say in June or so, they can look pretty scruffy. Here's a cross fox. This is actually between a silver fox or the black fox and a red fox, Denali National Park. Actually one of the wolves in Denali National Park. Love working with the grizzly bears there. I've actually, one story once, I was in the evening time, I was by myself out by Wonder Lake, wonderful scene of Denali National, Mount Denali. A couple caribou were in the area, so the next morning I go back hoping to find those caribou where I can put them against the backdrop of the Mount Denali. Instead, down the valley, like this valley here, and on the other side is a grizzly bear chasing a ground squirrel. The ground squirrel is leading 3-0 by ducking into a hole, popping up on the next. Moments later, the grizzly bear spots me, starts running up towards me, stops about 75 feet in front of me, gives me a side profile look, puts the hairs up on the back of his shoulders, and prances back and forth. And I'm now saying, oh, shoot. Well, it wasn't, oh, shoot, but you can get the hint. And then he runs right at me. He glances less than 3 feet and goes up the hill above me. I wait about 15 minutes. I check to make sure my pants and everything, that I'm presentable, because my car is over. I got to go back over the lower part of this hill. The grizzly bear happens to be at the top of the hill, sees me, and starts charging down at me again. I was so blessed because a helicopter with rangers were coming into the Wonder Lake Ranger Station, saw the grizzly bear chasing down towards me, swooped down and scared the grizzly away. The eagle was taken in Homer, Alaska, the mountain range from Mount Rainier, part of the Cascades. Again, this is a digital image, but I was working with my Getty Images stock agency, and we designed and put this composite together. I love working down in Florida. In fact, I'm going to be there coming up this next April. I'm going to go down and do some photography with many of the herons, egrets, etc. And here's just a few. A blue heron. To get this exposure, the black is in shadow, a body of water. And then what I've done is I've exposed to the heron itself, giving me this dark background. Those early mornings, calm water, reflections, and reflections of the morning light. Sandhill crane. This is down near Bradenton, Florida, Myakka River State Park, feeding the little chick. Again, this has that concept of motherhood, caring, sharing, nurturing. I just a couple of years ago tested for Canon down in Bosque del Apache, some images of cranes, etc. This is another digital composite. What I did is, here is 1,000 millimeters that I took with my 500 millimeter lens with a 2x to get me 1,000 millimeters. These are the sandhill cranes. I cut them out and then I merged them together. So this would not go into anything photo contest. I just finished judging the photo contest for Nampa, their showcase, but they do have one area now where what we can do is we can place images that are digitally done and have that entered against each other. That's the only place that this would go other than for me for commercial sales. I like going to Bosque del Apache from towards the end of November, December, January, into February. If you go, let's say the first part of December, or when they're having actually the Crane Festival down there, what they're doing is they're growing corn in that, and the cornfields are being cut and helping to bring in the different birds in that. The earlier in the season, the closer the fields are that are being cut to you on the road. As the season wears on, they start cutting further and further back. Thus, the birds are further back for you. This American widgeon was actually taken in a pond. What I like to do is when I go down to Bosque del Apache, I stay in Socorro. There is in Socorro, there's a small college there. They have a fountain where a lot of people come and feed the birds. This is where this was done. Or as I'm traveling back to Albuquerque to fly back home, go to the Albuquerque Botanical Gardens. They have where these wood ducks will literally come out of the water and walk all over your feet. greater scops. During the wintertime, I like to go down into Arizona, Tucson area, Gila, woodpeckers. This is the Texas Hill Country, taken out of Austin, Texas. This is a little bit more to the east in what's called the Gay Hill area, Independence, Texas. This gobbler, I actually did gobble, 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 and brought this guy in. He was more interested in the female until he heard from me. This is handheld with a 1:400 lens. Olympic National Park, Glacier National Park, like in July. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move down into South America. This is Jacana, actually in the headwaters of in Peru, in the headwaters of the Amazon basin. This is a golden blue macaw, also green wing macaws. I've been really fortunate to work with a number of different guides in that I've been able to go down to Peru. Like for instance, this is again in the jungles of Manu. This red-headed woodpecker, this is actually 1,000 millimeters just to get this image. But now, of course, one of the things, the key is to get a really sharp, tack sharp image in the first place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop. Now this is cropped down to 27 millimeters. But if I want to come in even tighter, I'm going to crop in more. And this originally then now comes down to 9.54 millimeters. That is too small to make any large prints. My stock agencies want things 24 megabytes or larger. So what I did is I put this through Topaz Gigapixel AI at 2x. At 2x, then this ends up at a 32 megabyte file. And look at what we're able to do. It is amazing. So the key now for me is make sure that the images are sharp. I can do some cropping if I need. This is a pygmy anteater. I've been fortunate to be down to Brazil, the Pantanal, 3 different times. I love butterflies. So this came and posing for me with the butterflies was really one of the moments that I was looking for and really felt blessed. Hyacinth macaws actually right next to their nesting hole in the tree, moving down into Brazil, into the area close to Iguazu Falls. This is an aerial toucan using fill flash. I like to use my fill flash with my Canon flashes, usually at -1 to -1.5. Here's an example of not using with the sun parakeet. This I did not use a fill flash. And if you notice, the underbody is not very well lit. With a fill flash, look at how even the underside is really well lit. In the same area, this is a Campo woodpecker this is again in Brazil in the Pantanal area. Jabiru storks. But hey, let's get up about 4:30 in the morning and hope to get them silhouetted at sunrise. Howler monkeys. Now what we've got is about 20 minutes, no more than 25 minutes. So we're going to go to Antarctica, then we're going to go to the Arctic and Asia and end up with Australia. So these are going to be somewhat show and tell. This is a digital image, 3 images that I put together as he's jumping midair and going into the water with his Gen 2 penguin. A lot of times when I go to Antarctica, what I will do is I will fly down to Santiago, Chile, stay overnight, fly another day to get to the Falkland Islands, get on board a ship. This is one of the rock hopper images that I was able to take in the Falklands. These always fascinate me. These are flightless steamer ducks. They actually, their wings, they can run along the water using their wings, but cannot fly. Some of the times that I like to go down to the Falkland Islands are like January and February. This was taken in January of one year with a black-brown albatross with the chick on the nest, coming and actually landing down to the nesting site with this black-brown albatross. Dolphin gull, striated caracaras. Then what I'm going to do from the Falklands on board the ship, we're going to sail another 2 days. This is my #1 favorite place in the world to photograph wildlife, and that's South Georgia. This is St. Andrews Bay. These are all king penguins. The brown jobs are the young ones. For me to go down to South Georgia, I've been there from, like, this is the end of September when everything is just still white. This is with a 24-105 at 35 millimeters. And the wind is blowing at least with katabatic winds about 60 miles an hour. Then I switched to my bigger 500 lens to come in a little bit tighter. Again, I love South Georgia from really the end of September into and through almost February. So I've been there at least, again, this area here, South Georgia, and this is the Salisbury Plains. This is looking to the south, turning 180 degrees. This is what I was able to get. These are only the king penguins that are going to the sea or coming back. What I love about this is when they're by this water, look at how nice and clean those bodies are. When you get closer inland, many times they're not as clean. This is still a pretty clean grouping. This is at 700 millimeters at f/22 because I needed to get as great a depth of field from foreground to background, focusing a third of the way into the frame. 1/45 of a second, 100 to 400 image stabilized, panning on the one lone king penguin. There's the young little guys. Now, I think the next one might be one that I'm using Luminar for with the sky replacement. This took less than 5 seconds to place this sky with these two. Done digitally, I will let you know. Commercially, this does extremely well. What we've got here is a wandering albatross. This is a 12-foot wingspan. They are just an amazing, amazing bird. Hey, what you got for me? Always tell a story if you can. Again, those concepts. And this is one of those big elephant seals and one of the young elephant seal pups. Kind of looks like he's yawning a little bit. Hopefully not too many of you are doing that as we sit here looking at this program. This guy looks like he's just not really happy. This is one of my 3 most favorite penguins to photograph. This is a macaroni coming in really tight, 1,000 millimeters, believe it or not, handheld. Now we're going to sail a couple more days and we're going to go to the Antarctica Peninsula, kind of showing more of a scenic. We don't always need to come in totally tight, such as this. Love showing this as the environment. This was several years back, I had an exclusive penguin calendar with brown trout, and this was the front cover. Another one telling a story, photographing a little bit more with a wide angle at 35 millimeters, 24 to 105, down by Plano, an area that is just marvelous also for all of the wonderful icebergs in the area. This is a single frame, 100 to 400, 400 millimeters. What was great is these Gentoo penguins, this lovely ice just off from the shoreline, they would jump up onto it and then capturing them as they're diving back into the water. 1/500th of a second, preferably 1/1000th. Gentoo penguins are in the brush-tailed penguin family because of the tail the way it is. These guys rob little pebbles from their next door neighbors' nesting sites, and they're constantly taking and stealing the rocks because the guy wants to show to his female that, look, I can do and take care of you. So here's the eggs. This is earlier on in the season in the end of December, 1st of January. I've been back then when these little guys now, the Gentoos, have hatched out and want to look for the cute nature. One image only was I able to capture this. I knew that they were chasing their parents to the water's edge. This guy got actually into the water, turned around, said, oh shoot, and jumped back. One image caught. I waited over 2 hours to get this image. Blue-eyed shags. This is kind of talking about that high key look that I like. Same thing with this Adelie penguin. Those moments that really make or break an image. This, again, is a good image during the snow. But how about this, as they're walking towards you hand in hand? This has been on note cards and has done really well sales-wise for me. You notice the snow, again, is stopped. So 1/250th or greater is my shutter speed. Actually, from the Zodiac, this is not done digitally. This is one that was done pure, 100 to 400, 400 millimeters, 1/750th of a second to stop the action. Coming on shore, chin strap. Chin straps are in the brush-tailed penguin area. And where's Waldo? Love this lichen and that. That's what was really making or breaking this image. But right over here is Waldo. Leopard seals. I've also been fortunate to work with the Arctic and polar bears from Russia, Alaska, Canada, Norway. What we're going to do, we're going to start out going to Norway, Svalbard, fly into Oslo, Norway, from there another 2.5 hours up to Longyearbyen, get on board a ship, sail another 1.5 days, 2 days to the high Arctic to be able hopefully to get this type of image. This was taken the first part of July, which is really a great time to go. Anticipation, knowing and watching what the subjects are doing. We knew that she was working from one ice floe to the next, so it was a matter of being ready, set, and anticipating her as she jumped. Lighting is everything. Polar bears, as you notice, are not a pure white, but how I get that exposure, that is a +1 with my Canon system. If I am going to capture those kill moments, I'd rather have one that is not bloody, such as this. This is one of the ships that I've gone on. What we do is we go down the gangplank, mainly working with the birds and not the polar bears. Now we're going to go out and we're going to look for Arctic terns and different types of shorebirds, etc. These are taken actually from the ship itself. Look at the guy, the little one is saying hello to us, or rolling over and playing, or anticipating that he is going to, or she is going to jump from one ice floe to the next. He's kind of looking at me, and what I like is the mouth open, a little bit of a reflection. Real quick story here, because I've only got about 5-10 minutes to go. But this guy comes up to the side of the boat. We're on the third deck on the back, and literally he starts shinnying up the side and actually puts his head through one of the drain holes on the back. And one of our participants went and thought this was really cute, looking at his beady little eyes looking at us. This guy put his head through that hole, actually grabbed onto the pant leg, thank goodness not his ankle. And we had to pull him away from this polar bear. In the environment with walrus, 24 to 105. Another one at 24 to 105. This guy is less than 4 feet from me. But now I'm going to put on my 1 to 400. Black-legged kittiwakes, ivory gulls, nesting Arctic terns, long-tailed jaegers, common eiders, female actually on her nest, female common eider, red phalaropes. Just kind of show you a few of the things that we've been able to photograph there in the Arctic. This is a marvelous, marvelous rock outcrop with all of these broad-billed mirrors. And here's what they look like close in. Going up to Churchill, Manitoba. I like to go up to Churchill, Manitoba, Gordon Point, etc. right around the end of October. Halloween, I've celebrated many years up there. Here's one of the polar bears crossing. It had been windy the night before. That blew off some of the snow from the ice, giving me this reflectiveness on the ice. Lighting, doing things, subjects. Also photographing the Arctic fox. We'll go to Asia next. I have wanted to photograph in Japan in the winter since mid-80s. I finally got to go there a couple years back, leading a photo workshop for Joe Van Oss. Fly into Tokyo, from there a couple hours north. Here we've got a young crowned crane, Japanese crane, chasing some of the whooper swans, but I'm looking for more of this. I was not blessed with snow coming down at this time, but I still feel that I got some really nice images. Why are these cranes there? Hey, look at all these photographers. On this trip, I only use my 1 to 400 for everything. And these are some of the examples, but how did they come in closer? Well, if you're feeding them grain, such as the corn like this, they're going to come in and give you displays. Then we went up to this marvelous lake that is totally iced over, except for the thermals that are some on the edge of the water. These whooping swans come in. This is what it really looks like. Here's the image that you're going to get with that, hopefully. Again, the whoopers are a lot of times there because they're going to feed them. A good image, but let's get a little bit colder, like right around 4 degrees below zero, with the thermals and the fog and the mist and then the whooping swans coming through it. Or snowfall. If you try to show this snow, white on white does not show. That's why I look for this body of water, stood up a little bit higher up so I could show the dark body of water. using the 1:400 and following at 400 millimeters with the zoom coming in. This is right around 180 millimeters, not cropped, full frame. The landing. Then we went out to the peninsula. And here we were able to be on board a ship, a boat, and we were working on several types of eagles. This is the white-tailed eagle. It is close to what the bald eagle looks like. To me, showing the underside is more the common image. The backside, as he's turning and swooping towards me in vertical, this was the challenge. My favorite eagle of all is the stellar sea eagle. This guy is huge. Coming in for a landing. Then we went back to Tokyo, got on board a bus, drove up into what they call the Japanese Alps, about 4-hour drive. We stayed at a lodge right in and next to the park where the snow monkeys are. This is the example of where the night before I had taken this image, but my shutter speed was not up enough. I had downloaded the images, I reviewed the images, they did not work. So the next day I went back, waited for them to dive under the water, coming out like a dog, shaking. I was at least able to repeat and get a winning, hopefully, image. Mother with her little baby, look at that red face. They are really so comfortable to being with and around people. Here's Dave Davis, one of the guys with me on my tour. This monkey got in trouble, the macaque. They went and chased him away. Little baby close up. We were blessed with some fresh snow coming in with a portrait. Now, almost all of these are done with fill flash with the 1:400. And the fill flash really helps to bounce the light in on these guys. The eyes are down. That's not what I want. Have them looking at you with fill flash, -1. Now, in the last couple minutes, we're going to do some wildlife of Australia. I've been there a couple times this trip for Joe Van Oss. What we did is we first drove our way up to Lamington National Park. Then we actually, with the koalas, this was at the Australian Zoo. But when we were at Lamington National Park, I was really hoping to get some of these types of, like the king parrot, which will come up in just a moment. This is one of the lorikeets, a rainbow lorikeet, but this is the king parrot. And oh, I wish I could get close to him. Well, they were somewhat used to us. Here's my co-leader with me, Darren Leal. Also crimson rosellas. Regent bowerbirds. This is a male satin bowerbird. They look at the beautiful blues. What he does with a bower, he collects everything that is blue, from blue bottle caps to blue little girls' blue hair ring, like little bows that are blue, the female that he's trying to attract. From there, we went to Fraser Island. Fraser Island is a sand island. This is some dingoes. I'll just show, I think, one more. This is a masked lapwing. Then we flew to Lady Elliot Island on the Great Barrier Reef. This tern really has an attitude. It's a black-napped tern, handheld 500 millimeters, 1/1000th of a second. Now, in a moment, I'm going to capture this black-napped tern, and he's going to get in a fight with another, and this is the moment. This is a brown booby. This is my last story. Hey guys, if you go out and you bring in, like this guy brought in this really nice fish to show to the female that he wants to nest with, but look at what he's doing. He's pulling back. He's not giving it to her. So moments later, a gull comes in, steals the fish from the male. He has to go back out to sea and find some more fish for his girl. Make sure you give that gift to her right away. And this is my last image. This is a pair of naughty terns. But wait, I think I'm going to have them also on a nest. This is right outside my door of where I'm staying. And with that, I really thank you guys for having me back for a third time. It's really a pleasure. I wish I was there in person, but at least we're able to share and do some of these things together. So, Colleen, with that, do we have any questions? I'll put this on an image.
We do. We have quite a few questions. Make sure you put your questions, please, in the Q&A panel and not in the chat, because I can't monitor both of those. So first question, I think you sort of touched on as to whether you crop a lot of your images, or are they the full frame?
Colleen, I would say 90% of my images are full frame. But if I need to crop, I will crop. I think we have the tools now that really allow us to do that. The key, again, as I mentioned, a sharp image. If you don't have a sharp image, it's not going to work, especially with like the Gigapixel AI by Topaz. Thank you, Colleen.
Okay. Abbott wants to know if substituting the 100 to 500 for your 500 f4 has impacted the controlling of the background, mainly, I suppose, because of the aperture.
Well, yeah, the one is an f4 and the other is, it goes from what, 4.5 to 7.1. So at 500, it is 7.1. That is one of the things that I'm going to have to watch out for. But I hate to say it, as time goes on, as we age, when we travel around the world, which not right now, it's going to be so much easier with the 1 to 500. If I was just doing bird photography in North America, I would have the 600 f4, or I would have the Canon 800 millimeters 5.6. But I would be taking mainly road trips.
Okay. Also, Bill wants to know, how close to your birds do you need to be for the Filth flash to have an impact?
Okay, what we can do, if anybody knows, we have these that are called extend-a-flashes. Used to be like the one I would use in the years past was a better beamer. And what they are is they're a Fresnel lens that goes and is mounted on a mount in front of your flash. And I can go out 90, 100 plus feet. So you just need to know when you need to put a better beamer on versus just taking it with the fill flash. So I'd say most of my fill flash, let's say within 30, 35 feet max, unless I use the better beamer. Good question.
Okay. And next question is, do you carry 2 camera bodies with you when you're on safari? And if you do you have a wide angle on one and a larger lens on the other?
Boy, those are great questions. Always. I have 2. And many times what I do is, let's say if I'm going to go back to Africa, I'm going to have 3 camera bodies. But 2 of them are going to actually be with me when I board the plane. I take them with me. 1 can be packed away in some luggage. And when I'm in Africa, because of the dust and that, I have 1 that's a wide angle, 1 with the telephoto. Exactly. So then I switch back and forth that way instead of switching lenses. Always have a backup.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and also related to cameras, how do you care for your cameras when you're in very cold conditions?
When I'm really cold conditions, the main thing for me is to have a number of batteries. With the new Canon R3, it has a larger battery. So I will have like 3 batteries for it. And that's what I do that. With like the R5 or the 5D Mark IV, I have up to 5 batteries that are charged that I keep, and I keep them warm, like in my pockets. And that's how I do it. Like I've been doing cowboy horse drives for years in the winter at the Hideout Ranch. In fact, I'm going to do one in January this year. And it's as cold as any place else. I've been down there to almost 10 below zero. And really the key there is to keep the batteries warm. Yeah, and hopefully yourself somewhat. Also, what I do is I don't like to take my camera from a really hot room and immediately take it out into the cold. So I keep my cameras where it is a little bit cooler, so you don't get that buildup of condensation. Another great question.
I found the opposite of that to be true also, Daryl, in that if you go from an air-conditioned room into a hot, humid climate.
Same thing.
Yes. Yeah. Here's a question. Have you used either the Canon 600 f11 or the Canon 800 f11 with your R5?
I personally haven't, but really a good friend of mine, George Lepp, and I are really close. We're on the phone almost every week, every other week. He has tested out and used both the 600 and the 800, and he has been extremely pleased with that. That is another way that I could go, like with the 800, but it is an F11 and it is a fixed. But I think those are also, they're light, they're easy to use, and they're not that expensive. But I have not used them myself.
Okay. So many say that stock photography is no longer an effective way to sell your work. What do you think? And what do you recommend for newer nature photographers today?
Well, let's put it this way. In 2008, Getty Images, which was one of my stock agencies, averaged $100 per image per year. And I had a lot of images, over 2,000 images with them. You're now less than 10 cents an image, if you're lucky. So stock photography, I still get a decent, a couple $1,000s a month through my stock sales with a couple of my agencies, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. And also you've got to think, like with Donita Delamont right now, I've got almost, as of yesterday, I just had another 1,500 placed with them. I've got over 11,000 images with them. That takes years and years to build to be able to start doing it. So stock photography can be a supplemental income for you. Also, what I recommend is going in a number of different directions. Like 1, don't quit your day job. Number 2, hopefully you marry into money. Number 3, your spouse is working. Number 4, what I would do is diversify. One of the best areas and ways that people are making income now is like through teaching, workshops, lecturing, etc. That's another way to go. You can also try and use and go through social media to have more and more presence. That's a couple ideas. Thanks, Colleen.
Okay. How often do you use a tripod, and do you use a gimbal head?
Okay, tripod. When I'm in Africa and I'm in a vehicle, I'm not using a tripod. I'm using a beanbag at the very most. If I'm doing a cowboy horse drive, almost all of it is with the 1-400 or now the 1-500, image stabilized, handheld. The key there is the stabilization and having a sufficient shutter speed. And for me, anything over 1/60th of a second, I've got a pretty good chance of a good image. But almost anywhere else, I like to use a tripod. And I do not use the gimbal. The reason for it is if I was using the 600 f4 or the 800, I would put it on a gimbal. But I like the ball head myself. So I would say other than Africa or like in Japan, when I was on board the ship, I'm not using a tripod. I'm hand holding that. But otherwise, I do love my tripod.
Okay. If someone was planning their first trip to Africa, where would you recommend they go for their first trip?
Well, the infrastructure is really good at the camps and that in Kenya. That's one. If you want really good road infrastructure, great landscape, interesting people, good wildlife, I love Namibia. I love the Sosafle sand dunes. I love Natasha National Park, the quiver trees. It is fantastic. So if you want the whole package, I love Namibia.
Okay. Someone asked about, do you plan your trips yourself and then finding out about groups? Would you like to talk a little bit about your own groups that you take out?
Well, yeah, like this cowboy horse drive that I'm doing in January, that I'm doing on my own. It does take, what you got to think though, when you do that, it takes a lot of time, organization, planning, etc. A lot of where I've been able to really travel the world, I've led photo workshops for Popular Photography, Palm Beach Photographic, International Wildlife, Rocky Mountain School of Photography, Joe Van Oss, and also my own workshops. The easiest ones are like when I work with Joe Van Oss, they organize everything. They say, here's your agenda. That's the easy way. If you can get on with like a Joe Van Oss, but it took me decades to finally even get enough experience to do it. I've led a lot of my own workshops along the Oregon coast to Colorado, Utah, California, etc. What I've done is I partner up with somebody else, like Ken and Lydia Strange with some of my Galeen Strange workshops. My deal is I supply where we go, the timing, and they do all the logistics, the bookings, hotels, etc. But that's the way you start out. You need to do your own and learn how to put it all together.
Mm-hmm. So how often do you get your gear serviced and cleaned? And when you're out in the field, does that become an issue?
Where the issue is, like where it is really dusty, again, we can go to Africa. A lot of times what I like to do is I take like a pillowcase, and when it's really dusty, I'll keep the camera and lens in it. When I get home, I will have them serviced. As a Canon Explorer of Light, they do all of that, of course, for me for free. But if you're a Canon shooter, you can go with a CPS, Canon Professional Services, and pay a certain amount per year, and you can get your camera gear serviced. Annually would be good to do it, unless you're really having a problem, something's not working, or you've got major dust problems.
Okay. Yeah, I've even heard of, change your lens inside of a plastic bag.
Yeah, one of the things I'd like to say, Colleen, about a plastic bag, have you noticed some plastic bags almost are a magnet for dust? So watch out for that. That's the only thing.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So let's see. Here's a question about these new cameras that have the in-body stabilization. Do you find it to be effective? And does that work with the lens as well if the lens is stabilized?
How's this? Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
George Lepp and I just wrote an article on the new Macro 100 by Canon. It has a total of 8 stops of image stabilization when you have both the cameras, such as the R5, along with the lens itself. So yes, yes, and yes.
Okay. A question about copyright. Larry noticed that one of our Larrys, we have several, he noticed that you had your watermark on some of your images, but no copyright symbol per se. But do you copyright your images, and how is that done?
I copyright really only a few of my key images. Like I've got images of snarling grizzly bear that's done now over $350,000 in sales. That is copyrighted because many times it has been stolen and misused. Otherwise, I'm running with over 44 terabytes of hard drive space. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of images. I can't copyright all of them. So what you've got to do is pick just the key ones if you're going to copyright.
Mm-hmm. And there is actually a website for copyrighting your images, and I don't know that site offhand. Can you just?
I don't, but I can recommend that if you aren't a member of NAMPA, they have some really good insights on the legalities.
Okay. And someone just asked, how do you handle your photo storage? You just mentioned that you have those humongous amounts of storage, so I assume you must have portable hard drives.
Yeah, what I have, let's talk about hard drives for a minute and how I do it. With my system at home, it is a PC. I have what is actually running the programs, etc. My C drive, that is a solid state. The other hard drives, I also have 2 systems that have 8 hard drives in each one of them. And those are run with 2 to 4 terabyte hard drives in each one of those. So I can go all the way through the alphabet when everything is running. Now, what I do is I have my working images, which are PSDs. I have my backup images, which are the RAW and the PSD. And I have a third backup that are on smaller hard drives. Let's say like Western Digital, the travel hard drives, like 4 terabytes. Those are stored at one of my son's houses. When I'm out in the field, what I use now is I use the solid state hard drives, 1 and 2 terabytes. Those are the ones that I use for backing up when I'm out in the field. Those then, when I come home, I download them into my main system. We could talk all day about just that.
Yeah, we could. Do you use any cloud services for backup?
I do not. Cloud services for maybe, let's say, 1 million images. Could you imagine how much cloud service? I've been offered these, actually, believe it or not, for free to go on with some people with this, but I've turned it down.
Mm-hmm.
Just too big a file for me, and not maybe fast enough. Sorry, Colleen, go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually do use a service called Backblaze that backs up my computer and my drives. So I feel like I do have some redundancy there in the cloud. But
Right.
Always nice to have it local as well a couple of times. Here's a comment from Ray Fortner that the website for copywriting images is just copyright.gov. And so anybody looking for that kind of information, that's there.
Hey, let me jump in. Ray, I want to thank you so very much. I know that you've been doing some teaching classes at one of the community colleges up here. Actually, Julie wrote to me and said that you had promoted in this program. I want to thank you, Ray. Okay, Colleen, sorry.
Just a couple more questions. One person asked, do you ever use a monopod as a more portable alternative to a tripod?
Yeah, where a couple places I like the monopod is like when I'm up at Churchill, Manitoba in the tundra buggies, I like using a monopod there. I've also used a monopod, believe it or not, when I've been out in the safari vehicles in Africa. Otherwise, I use them sparingly.
So this question for new people is, they want to know, do you really need a 500mm lens for wildlife photography? And I'm sure there's lots of different ways to answer that question.
Okay, here's my answer. If you're going to Africa, you could probably get by with a 70-200, but you will not get as close sometimes as maybe what you would like. The same thing goes for if you go to Antarctica. So I think really one of the solutions now, as you can see with me, is either that 1-400 or the 1-500. Also, I'm not going to talk about, Larry, somebody else is sponsoring for the next meetings. They have some extremely good zoom lenses.
Yes, and they're not terribly expensive, so that's an option.
Right.
Do you use blinds, or do you often shoot from a vehicle? I would assume Africa is mostly always from a vehicle, but
What I like to do is mainly using a vehicle as a blind. I've done that on a lot of national wildlife refuges up and down the coast here, from Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge to Bosque del Apache, Ding Darling in Florida. I like to use that as a blind. I have actually used everything from floating blinds on some different lakes, etc. But for me, I like to learn where I can approach the wildlife and work with them. Like the pileated woodpecker that I took in my backyard. What I did is I actually photographed that from my kitchen, through my kitchen window, by putting the lens right up to it. So I guess I am using my house as a blind.
yeah. Couple more questions regarding flash. One person wanted to know what type of flash you use. And then another said that he's been hesitant to use flash because he feels it could disturb the wildlife. And can you just talk a little bit more about how you use it without disturbing the animals?
Okay, what I like to use is the most current Canon speed light, like the 600EX or even a newer. That is my preference for a flash myself because it works really well. So if you got a Nikon, use a Nikon flash system. If you've got like my wife photographs with Olympus, an Olympus flash system. Do they bother the wildlife? Generally not. Think about when you're out in Africa and it's a fairly bright out. That flash is hardly showing at all to that subject. Now, if you're just right with a black background, really, really dark night, it could impact some. But what I like to do is study the animals and see how it is. I find the flash not to be that bothersome.
Okay. And I think the answer to this is probably yes, but do you use an extender or a teleconverter with your 100-400?
I use the 1X and the 4 and the doubler with the 1-4 and get extremely good results. I also use the 2X, the new 2X RF with my 1-500 RF mirrorless. So yes, and George Lepp does the same, and we've both gotten fantastic images.
I've had really good experience too with the one floor extender on the Sony 200 to 600 lens. So they're getting better. Ray also mentioned a resource that some of you might be interested in regards to copyright information. That's the Washington Lawyers for the Arts, where they have some great advice and legal clinics each month. I think we're kind of winding down on questions here. There's one about location scouting, and how do you find some of your locations?
Well, right now, imagine when I started out in the early 80s. We were talking about this, Larry, there was hardly any information. There were just a few books out. Now the internet, you can almost locate and find anything. Also by reviewing other people's works on social media, taking a look at, let's say, Getty Images, Danita Delamont, many of the other stock agencies, look at the images, research them on each and one of the different subjects. You will find the time, the place, or one of the easiest ways is like, go to Joe Van Oss, take a look at his offerings of where he's going, what he's offering, go with him. Or at least it gives you an idea of places and times to go to different locations.
Okay, I think we're gonna close off on the questions. Some people had some questions that were a little bit more specific to themselves, so I'll try to answer those myself. I can type answers to those. At this point, I think we'll like to take a little break for about 10 minutes or so. And then when we come back, we're going to have the election of officers for the nature photographers of the Pacific Northwest for the next 2 years. And then we will go into our image competitions. So thank you so much, Daryl. It was an excellent presentation. Love your photos. And thank you all who sent some questions in. There are a few comments in the chat. Daryl, you should be able to see those. A lot of thank yous there. So maybe during break, you can look through those.
Thank you very much, Colleen. I'm going to leave with this. Teaching teaches the teacher, right, Larry?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. So let's come back at, let's see, it's 10:40, 10:50. Okay, about 10:50.
Here, is my phone not connected anymore? It looks like it is.
I see you just fine, Gerald. Go ahead.
Okay, you can hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, great. I'm good to go.
So for those of you new to the nature photographers of the Pacific Northwest, you might not realize that we actually do have officers. We have a president, vice president, and treasurer. And those people come up for re-election every 2 years. And so this is a year for that. And so I'm going to turn the meeting over to Gerald Pumphrey, who is going to run this year's election very quickly. We'll use it via the polling service. So Gerald, go ahead.
Thank you, Colleen. I think it is the case since I first started attending the Northwest Nature Photographers of the Pacific Northwest in the fall of 2013, our president, Larry Rosenketter, has been actively recruiting a successor at most, if not all, of our meetings. A couple of weeks ago, Larry called me and there was some obvious and additional excitement in his voice. He announced that Harold Klein had agreed to stand for election as president of the organization. I did not inquire about what level of cajoling, badgering, or bribery was involved, and later came to understand that the answer would have been none. I asked Harold to provide a little information to facilitate my opening of the electoral process. Harold is a longtime member of NPPNW, and like most of us, or many of us, he considers himself an advanced amateur photographer. And like most of us, he says he does not generate that much income from actual photography. However, Harold is deeply involved in the photographic industry as co-owner of the Yellowstone Camera Store, Perfect Light Camera and Supply in Idaho Falls, and Photo Adventure Workshops and international photography tour business. Harold is also involved in online photography training. Before I hand the screen off to Harold, I would like to also call your attention to the rest of our slate of officers. Mary Pinion, whose work I can assure you we would not be having this meeting, without whose work I can assure you would not be having this meeting today, is our candidate for vice president. Mary cannot be with us this morning due to a family health issue. And DJ Mark, a longtime and very active member of the Olympia Camera Club, is our very capable candidate for treasurer. After Harold shares a couple of comments with you, I would direct your attention to the bottom of your screen. There you may click on poll and cast your ballot. Now for some comments from Harold Klein. Thank you.
Gerald, thanks. I had always heard Larry's inquiries regarding looking for somebody to step up, and there was always met with some pretty nervous chuckles in the room. And I think Larry had visited the Yellowstone Camera Store this summer, and in talking to Chris Bulmer, who is my partner and one of the previous speakers here, after that he asked me if I'd be interested in doing this. And I thought, after being kind of a bit of a lurker, attending the meetings, editing or entering a few images into competition and things, I thought this can be my contribution to the group, which I think is a wonderful group. It's unprecedented in its scope and the geography that it covers and the quality of the photographers in it. And it is so low key and informative that I thought this is something I can get behind. And I felt with maybe my involvement in the industry, I could also bring some other resources to the table as needed to perpetuate this organization. So that's it. Yes, I am involved in the industry. I retired after a long career in the medical device industry, implantable pacemakers and defibrillators, and retired as the director of training for an international device company. And then have been working with Chris and his business empire industry, for a while, assisting with the trips. Now I'm leading the trips as well. And I have to thank Daryl again for one thing that really jump-started my photographic career was finally taking a workshop. And I started with a couple of Canon live learning weekends down in Bosque del Apache and a couple other places, and then took the big leap and did a trip to Alaska with a formal workshop. And boy, with the repetition that you get and being there with equally skilled photographers and the immersion in the whole process for a full week, you come out of it as a completely different individual. And I thank him again, Daryl again, for reiterating that point and the importance of the workshops and learning to really think about being watching your borders and watching your light and having people help get you in position and understand what the processes are. So it's vitally important. And I think that's one message that I think hopefully we all got out of his talk. And that's something that we talk about all the time in the stores and working with thousands and thousands of photographers over the summer in Yellowstone, is getting people a little bit out of their comfort zone and pushing them a little bit so that we all get better. And it is true, the teacher does learn a lot when he's on these workshops and work with individuals from all over. So with that being said, I am ready, willing, and able to jump in with the help of all the talented people, helping run this organization behind the scenes, and some of them not so much behind the scenes, but to keep it going and help it grow and prosper and be a viable entity in the future. So with that, I'll turn it back to Gerald.
Well, I think Colleen is turning on the voting, and you should have a little pop-up on your screen and should be able to vote. And that would conclude this process, and I'll turn it back to Colleen.
Okay, I see people are still voting. Please try to get those votes cast right away. About a little over half of you have voted, so we'd like to be able to close that poll off real quickly. But we are going to move into our competitions here. So I can leave the voting open for a short period of time, but once the competitions get rolling, we would like to be able to close that poll. So as Gerald mentioned, Mary has been a great contributor to our club as vice president and would be generally running these competitions. But since she is not here, I have volunteered to step in and present the results of our image competitions. So before each meeting, we ask members to submit their images in the following categories: plant life, scenic, and wildlife. Members could submit up to 3 images as long as at least one of them was in a different category than the others. The first thing I'd like to do today is recognize and thank our members who volunteered to judge the images this time. The plant life category was judged by Judy Mason, Chen Yang Liu, and Lynn Greenup. The scenic category was judged by Jean Morgan, Marjorie Kinch, Vern Bartley, and Todd Wolf. The wildlife category was judged by Fred Schneider, Sandy Zelasco, Sue Joe, and Ellen Bogenschultz. Thank you all for providing your time and expertise for judging for this meeting submissions, and my apologies if I mispronounced any of your names wrong. So this is the 3rd time we've completed our judging online. Each judge was given online access to the images that were entered in the competition, and judging or scoring was done blind with no maker marks, and judges recorded their scores on a spreadsheet, which was then correlated by Bruce Miller. I want to thank Bruce Miller for all his work in this competition as well, because he's the one who will be presenting the slideshow of our images today. So Bruce, would you like to go ahead and share your screen with the scoring guidelines? Okay, scoring was done using the following guidelines, and you can read them there. Our point range is between 65 and 99 points. A 66 to 69 image indicated a strong image. A 70 to 79 indicated a very strong image with good technical and image contents. An 80 to 89 indicated an excellent image with unique content, strong design, and technical excellence. A 90 and above indicated a superior image with no faults and it had an outstanding impact. As this is nature photography, the limited hand of man rule was followed. And so for those of you maybe not familiar with that term, it means that either there was no indication of man in the picture, or if there was, it's very slight and not the main subject of the image. So let's look at the competitions by category. We'll see all the submissions for the category with and without first, and then with the score. In the past, we tried to announce the score, but we found that because of the latency involved sometimes in Zoom, the announced score wasn't matching up with the correct image. So we will have the score printed on the corner of the image. There won't be any audio while we're showing the images. But after we're done there, showing the images for the category, we'll show the top 4 from each category, and we'll have the maker as well as Daryl give some comments on the image. So I'm going to go ahead and close off the poll now. It looks like most of you have voted. And we'll go ahead and start with the plant life category, in which we had 50 images. Okay, so that concludes our images in the plant life category. And now we're going to take a look at the top 4 scoring images, starting with Hibiscus by Kim Koptron. And Kim, if you could turn your microphone on, and could you just tell us a little bit about your image once we have it up on the screen?
Yeah, this is I will taken this with the my mirrorless Sony and in botanical garden in Chicago when we come to visit my husband brother there.
Okay, thank you, Kim. And Daryl, would you care to comment a little bit on this?
Yeah, I would be really happy. First off, in the plant life area, I really saw some excellent photographs. And that is really great. This one, even before the score came up, I knew it was going to score well. It's got some really great impact to it. Technically, we've done a really great job, really good focus. It's got good color. Composition is nice. In this case, the black background really adds to the elements of this image. Well done.
Thank you, Daryl. This image had a score of 87 points. So the next image is UV Fluorescing Flowers by Fred Schneider. And Fred, would you like to tell us a little bit about this image?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Good. I hit the right button. This set of flowers is fluorescing because it's being illuminated only by ultraviolet light. A few plants will do that. This would be commonly called the hens and chicks plant. So it's shot with UV light only with a DA50 Nikon 105 millimeter lens using the focus shift method, and then using focus stacking of 123 images for the final result.
And Daryl, would you like to comment on that, please?
Yeah, I would love to. First off, just a beautiful image. Great job done by the maker. First off, wow, look at just in the technical area, how many steps he went through to get this. One with the UV lighting, number 2 with the focus stacking, number 3 with how close up this image is. These are pretty small flowers, I know that. Again, this has really great impact to me, great subject matter. I think it's extremely interesting. It makes the maker want to look at it even further and delve into it. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. This image also scored 87 points. And the next image is Big Leaf Maple by Don Jacobson.
Yes, thank you. This was taken in an area where I've hiked frequently over the last 17 years, and I've passed this tree numerous times. And I was actually looking to photograph the big leaf maple a little earlier in its progression, but I just walked by this newly opened leaf and flower bud, and it really spoke to me and said, photograph me. And so I did. It was taken with a 100 millimeter macro lens with a ring flash.
Okay, thank you, Don. Daryl?
Yeah, Don, what's interesting is, as you said, you were probably hoping originally, you had a preconception. You said, I didn't want these quite out as far as they have, opened up, but this is really perfect. I love the fanning look to it. The center of focus is throughout is really great. What's interesting is now the three winners so far, each one of them has used a black background. And that black background really does, when you're judging, it gives that initial really impact that you're looking for. So again, you had perfect timing, great focus, great lighting, good color. Your processing was spot on. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
And Don's image scored 90 points. So the next image is Pink Lotus by Jan Eckoff. Jan, would you like to tell us about your image?
Yeah, it's from Hughes Water Garden. And I just liked how the flower and the leaves were positioned. And I did a little bit of work on it, to gave it a little bit of a glow and saturation. And the background was a little bit distracting. So it's a little bit blurred. That's about it.
Thank you. Daryl?
Yeah, well, you notice, Jan, one of my themes when I was giving my presentations was the background.
Mhm.
You really did a great job controlling the background. This one scored 91 points, right, Colleen?
Yes, it did.
I had a reason for writing that down because it really came and had that great, again, impact to me right away. The colors, the focus, the composition. This is just a beautiful image. I would love to have had this myself.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Thank you all for all your submissions. So now we'll move on to the images in the scenic category. We had 59 images that were judged. And so again, you'll see the image first without the score and then with the score. Okay, thank you. So now Bruce will key up the top scoring images in the scenic category, and I will ask the makers to unmute themselves one by one. But I do need to explain one thing. When Bruce tallies up the scores for these images from the various judges, he ends up with decimals sometimes. And then we have to round up. So although we saw several images that maybe scored what would seem to be in the top 4, we had to go with the decimals to figure out who the actual top 4 would be. So Bruce, if you could go ahead and put that first image up. So this is Foggy Redwood Sunrise by Bill Bulmer, and it scored 93 points. Daryl? Or no, Bill, excuse me, Bill.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Bill.
So this was taken at on the Damnation Creek Trail on the Northern California Redwoods. I'd heard this was a great place to go for fog shots, and I just got really lucky. I was walking down and the sun popped out of this area. I had a Sony A7 III with a 12 to 24 f2.8 lens on it, and it was just doing wonderful things. I must have shot 40 shots here, but you always say when you get the great light, just keep shooting. And I like this one particularly with the nice sunburst that I got on it.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. Bill. Daryl, would you like to comment on that, please?
Very much so. Bill, you're exactly right. Out of Jedediah Smith, Lady Bird Johnson, Del Norte is my favorite, and especially Damnation Trail. Just real quickly, I remember hiking down Damnation Trail down to where it merges with the coastal trail, and 75 feet in front of me was a mountain lion growling at me. So I remember this trail very well, pirouetting back up Damnation Trail, checking to make sure that I was okay. So this image brings back great fond memories. I love the way that you put the star effect with the sun in it. The exposure is dead right on. I like the silhouette of the large trees. Great composition. I love the wide angle, really made this dramatic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. So the next image is Little River Falls by John Preston, also scoring 93 points. John, have you turned your mic on? John Preston?
All right, is he unmuted?
Okay.
Okay. Where did I say that? This is taken near Glide in Oregon. Little Falls, it's called. A great place to go. It's right beside the highway, even some development around there. And so I like the combination of the leaves with the green and the falls there.
Very nice. Thank you, John. Daryl?
You know, John, you really did a great job with this as the maker. When this one came up, I was hoping that it would be in the top 4, because I think we had like 3 that kind of scored 93, but this one has just that little bit of an edge. Your exposure is dead on. I love the subject matter, your composition, the way you have the leading lines of the water streaking through, going from the right up to the left. And also just a perfect shutter speed. I love that feeling of the water, the movement. Great texture with it also. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl.
Hmm.
And our next image is Sweeping Coast by Ewan Murresque, also scoring 93 points. Ewan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I took this on my high school spring break that I took with my grandparents to the coast. We just waited out near the sea stack till sunset, and I noticed the way the wave was sweeping in, and I wanted to utilize that as some leading lines. My tripod didn't like it too much, but I was pretty happy with the picture that came out of it.
Very nice. Daryl?
Ewan, you really, it was great going out there with your grandparents. I love hearing that. That even makes a little bit more resonance to me. Another one with the star effect coming in with the composition, with the landscape itself. The sweeping waters, it kind of has that motion to it, movement to it, a little subtlety to the clouds and the light there. Just really well done. Congrats.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daryl. And then we have our last image in the scenic category is called Backflip by Bruce Severeid. It's scored at 96 points. Bruce?
Thank you. This was taken at Cape Disappointment and on the Washington State coast. It's taken shutter speed between this 1/1600th and 1/2000th of a second. And I've been there 21 times. You have to be there at the right time to get the shot.
For sure. Thank you. Daryl?
Well, Bruce, this is one of those that when we look at it, we really say, wow. Your shutter speed, as you mentioned, 1/1500th of a second to 2000th of a second. Your exposure is right on. What I love is a little penetration of the light greens that are showing through it. Your depth of field is really well handled. It really shows that you have been there. You know what you're doing. So I think I need to learn something from you on doing this one. Congratulations, Bruce.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you. So that concludes our scenic images. We're going to take a 10-minute break now before we move into the wildlife images. So we'll see you back here at, let's see, 11:47, sorry. And we'll resume with the wildlife category. Okay, that completes our wildlife image competition. And now we'll put up the top scoring images in this category. This image is entitled Islamic Icelandic Puffins by Kathy Ju. Scored 89 points. Kathy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. This was shot the summer in Iceland. It was a quite pleasant experience, and first time to see so many puffins in such close distance. And it wasn't easy to shoot them, so I have to handheld camera with 104 to 400 lens. And yeah, out of a few hundred photos, I got a few good ones.
Thank you, Kathy. Lovely image. Daryl?
Well, Kathy, this is really a great image. Well done. Background's great. The focus is right on. One thing that I want to observe when I was watching the 95 wildlife images, some of them could have scored higher if they had not been over sharpened. There were some that were over sharpened, but had great content to them. You've got to be careful for that. Or not enough sharpening. Some of them weren't quite sharp enough, and a few were what I would say over processed. And so those are some things we want to be cautious of. But Kathy, you didn't do any of those things. You have the processing here, the lighting, the look is just really great, and it's doing something. Look at that mouthful. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. The next image is Roadrunner Snacks by Richard Eltridge, scored at 89 points, but I don't see Richard online. So I'm not able to unmute him for comments. Richard, if you're online under some other name, maybe throw up a message in the chat, but let's send it right over to Daryl for comment.
Well, one of the first things is this is dramatic. The subject, the Roadrunner, is doing something. What's interesting with the bug, as it's ready to take and swallow it, there's only one real true highlight, that circle that's right around the bug itself. Great timing, really nice and sharp where it needs to be on the bill and the eyes. Well done. I love the color palette also.
Thank you, Daryl. The next image is Gray Wolf by Sandy Watt, which scored at 91 points. Sandy, would you like to comment on your image?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the score. This was taken at the Issaquah Zoo in Issaquah, Washington. I have a Nikon D500 that I used my Sigma 150 to 600 lens on, and it is heavily cropped.
Okay, thank you. Daryl?
But heavily cropped, but well done. The background is wonderful. I love the tufts of hair that are a little bit on the gray side around its muzzle. It just really shows it off. But of course, for me, what really gives it the impact are those eyes. So technically, we did a great job. The color balance, I love. The lighting is great. The subject matter, the wolf, is super. So on animals, the nose, the eyes, the ears, we got it. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, the next image is Wild Stallion Showdown on the Salt River by Fran Yates. And I just got a message from Fran that she doesn't have a microphone set up, but she says, I was focusing straight ahead when I heard splashing on the left. I quickly pivoted, shutter speed at 1/2000th of a second. And she's a new member to our group. So congratulations, friend. Daryl, would you like to go ahead and comment on her image?
First off, outstanding image. I love doing horse drive, horses, photography. I've been doing it for 25 plus years. This is a great image, great impact to it. Love those back hind hooves with the splash of the circle of the water and that horse behind moving its head just at the right moment, hopefully not to get hit. Lighting is great, really dramatic image. It was well worth being a winner.
And I forgot to mention, she scored 91 points on that image. Thank you. Thank you, Daryl. And thank you all for your wonderful images. And that's it then for our wildlife competition. And our whole competition we're completed with. Thank you again to all your entrants. And remember that in the spring, you can enter images again. If we go to Zoom again, we will have the deadline 2 weeks before the meeting. If it's not on Zoom and we're able to have a live meeting, it will be 1 week before the meeting that your images will be due. So just kind of keep that in mind and start thinking about what you might like to enter. So at this point, let's see, I will hand the meeting over back to Larry. And Larry, if you could turn your camera on as well. That'd be great.
Hello, can you hear?
We can hear you.
Okay, Daryl, I hope you can hear the thunderous applause from our participants. That we certainly thank you for a wonderful presentation and for your comments. We look forward to an encore sometime. You're one of us. We thank you and we think of you often.
Thank you very much, Larry, and for everybody that attended and the kind words. It's much appreciated.
I want to recognize 4 people who have done a great deal making it possible to have this virtual meeting. That would be Colleen Easley, Gerald Pumphrey, Bruce Miller, and Mary Pinion. So they deserve our applause as well. And then I would like to conclude with a few words about our organization. That we have tried to do 3 things over the years, and over the years now means more than 2 decades, that we have tried to have an outstanding day twice a year in which everyone goes away feeling that they have learned something and that they've been rejuvenated and they've been excited about nature photography and they're ready to go out and get some more wonderful images. The second thing that we tried to do is to keep it very simple, not to have extraneous things, spend our day looking and talking about nature photography, but minimize other things. And the third goal that we've had is to keep it very, very affordable. And the $10 that we ask people to contribute for a meeting that they're coming to, that's simply a donation. We have the we've had the strategy of saying that if someone can't afford the $10 or for some reason doesn't wish to contribute $10, then there's no charge. And I think we've been very successful in meeting those 3 objectives. Now, how have we been able to do this? Well, number 1 is we've had a sponsor for quite a few of our meetings, and the sponsor provides our invited speaker at essentially no cost to the organization. The second thing that's made our meetings possible has been that we have met at colleges and universities along I-5, where we either have a member who is a faculty member or on the staff or knows somebody there, so that we've been able to have facilities in which to meet at a very small cost. More often than not, we've had a co-sponsor as some organization at the host institution. And the third thing that's made this all possible is a large number of volunteers. And this last item is probably the most important item. It's unbelievable how many people have pitched in and how many different ways they have done that. So without all of that assistance and contributing where one can, we simply would not be able to have these meetings. So I would like to thank our new officers that are coming in, two of whom are new. Harold Klein, we certainly look forward to your leadership and we thank you for stepping in. And Mary Pinion, this is her second go around. And now DJ Mark, that some of you will remember that Frank Townsend had been the treasurer for maybe a decade or close to a decade, and he died very suddenly and unexpectedly. So DJ is moving in to take that position. So thanks to everyone. Thank you for sharing your Saturday morning with us, and we look forward to seeing you in person. I certainly am hoping that the pandemic is under control enough so that in April we can have an in-person meeting, because I'm sure missing seeing all of you and being there for the buzz and the enthusiasm that you bring to our meeting. So thanks for everything.